The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the corner office, casting long shadows across the polished wooden desk. Anthony Reed straightened his tie for what felt like the 100th time that morning. Today wasn't just any Monday. It was the day that could change everything for Bright Horizon Technologies. Mr. Reed. The board members are arriving in 30 minutes, his assistant Tanya announced from the doorway. Would you like me to set up the refreshments now? Anthony nodded, his mind already racing through the presentation he'd spent weeks perfecting. Yes, please. And make sure the projection system is working this time. We can't afford any technical hiccups today. As CEO of Bright Horizon for the past 5 years, Anthony had guided the company through rough waters, transforming it from a struggling startup into a respected name in sustainable technology. But today's presentation could take them to unprecedented heights, a partnership with global innovations that would fund their newest project for years to come. Tanya left, and Anthony turned to the window looking out at the city sprawled below. At 42, he had achieved more than most people did in a lifetime. The business magazines called him a visionary. His competitors called him relentless. But success had come at a cost, namely, a personal life that barely existed beyond these glass walls. His phone buzzed with a text from his mother. "Knock 'em dead today, son." Dad would be so proud, Anthony smiled. His father had passed away 3 years ago, but his influence remained. A hardworking man who had built his own small business from nothing. He had taught Anthony that true success meant lifting others as you climbed. The intercom on his desk buzzed, interrupting his thoughts. "Mr. Reed?" Tanya's voice sounded strained, unusual for his typically unflappable assistant. "I'm sorry to bother you, but there's a situation in the lobby." Anthony frowned. "What kind of situation?" "There's a child here. A little girl. She somehow got past security and is insisting she needs to speak with you. Security is trying to locate her guardian, but she's quite upset and specifically asking for you by name." "For me?" Anthony's frown deepened. "There must be some mistake. I don't know any children. She's very determined, sir. Says her name is Rose and that it's extremely important." Anthony glanced at his watch. 25 minutes until the most crucial meeting of his career. "Tanya, I really don't have time for this right now. Can't security handle it?" "I would normally agree, sir, but—" Tanya hesitated. "She seems genuinely distressed. And she mentioned something about her father being in the military and knowing you somehow." Anthony sighed. He had donated to several veterans organizations over the years, following his father's example of giving back. Perhaps this was connected. "Fine. Tell security I'll be down in 5 minutes. But this needs to be quick." "Yes, sir. Thank you." Anthony gathered his notes into a leather portfolio, his mind still running through key points of his presentation as he rode the elevator down to the lobby. Whatever this was about, he'd need to resolve it swiftly. The lobby of Bright Horizon Technologies was a testament to modern design. Glass, steel, and splashes of vibrant green representing the company's commitment to environmental technology. Near the reception desk stood a small figure, her purple backpack nearly as big as she was. As Anthony approached, the security guard looked relieved. "Mr. Reed, thank you for coming down. This young lady has been quite insistent about speaking with you." The girl turned, and Anthony found himself looking into the most serious pair of brown eyes he'd ever seen on a child. She couldn't have been more than 8 or 9, with braided hair adorned with colorful beads that clicked softly when she moved. Her school uniform, navy blue and white, was neatly pressed, but her sneakers were well worn. "Are you Mr. Reed?" she asked, her voice small but remarkably steady. Anthony nodded, kneeling down to her level. "I am. And you must be Rose. My assistant tells me you've been asking for me." The girl nodded, clutching the straps of her backpack tightly. "Yes, sir. I'm sorry for coming to your work. My teacher says interrupting grown-ups at work is rude, but this is an emergency." Despite himself, Anthony felt a smile tugging at his lips. "Well, if it's an emergency, then I suppose that's different. What can I help you with, Rose?" Rose took a deep breath as if gathering courage. Then she looked him straight in the eye and said, "Sir, could you pretend to be my daddy? Just for a day?" Anthony blinked, certain he had misheard. "I'm sorry." "Just for tomorrow," Rose continued hurriedly. "It's the father-daughter day at my school, and all the girls are supposed to bring their dads, but my dad is deployed overseas. He's a Marine and he won't be back for another 3 months. Anthony's mind raced, trying to process this unexpected request. Rose, I'm very sorry about your father being away, but I think there's been some confusion. I don't know your family. I know you don't know us, Rose said, her words tumbling out faster now. But I saw you in the newspaper last month when you gave money to the Veterans Center. My mom volunteers there sometimes, and the article said you grew up without much money, just like us, but you worked hard and now you help people. And I thought maybe you'd help me too. Anthony felt a strange tightness in his chest. This child had sought him out based on a newspaper article, crossing the city to a corporate building where she didn't belong, all on the slim hope that a stranger might help her avoid the embarrassment of attending a school event alone. Rose, where is your mother now? Does she know you're here? Rose looked down at her shoes. She's at work. She has 2 jobs, and she couldn't take tomorrow off to come with me instead. I left her a note saying I was going to ask you. She looked back up at him, her expression brightening. But I took the proper bus routes. I'm very responsible. Anthony tried to look stern, though he was secretly impressed by her resourcefulness. That was very dangerous, Rose. Your mother must be worried sick. Excuse me, Mr. Reed, the receptionist called over. We've contacted the girl's mother using the emergency contact information in her backpack. She's on her way now. Anthony nodded his thanks, then turned back to Rose. Your mother is coming to get you. We'll sort this out when she arrives. Rose's shoulders slumped and she blinked rapidly as if fighting tears. I understand, sir. I'm sorry for bothering you. Before Anthony could respond, his phone buzzed with a message from Tanya. Board members arriving early. Meeting in 10 minutes. He should go back upstairs immediately. This meeting represented years of work, the future direction of his company, the jobs of hundreds of employees. He needed to focus, to prepare. But something held him there, standing in the lobby with this brave, resourceful child who had crossed the city alone rather than face the prospect of being the only girl without a father at her school event. Rose, he said gently, what I did, growing a business, becoming successful, that took many years. But what you did today, coming all this way on your own, speaking to a stranger and asking for help, that took real courage. I think your father would be very proud of how brave you are. A tear escaped despite Rose's best efforts sliding down her cheek. But he still won't be there tomorrow. Anthony's assistant appeared at the elevator, gesturing urgently. 5 minutes to the meeting that could change everything. He made a decision. Let me speak with your mother when she arrives. I can't promise anything, but perhaps we can figure something out. Rose's face lit up. Really? You might do it? Like I said, I need to speak with your mother first. And it would only be for the school event, just for a day. That's all I'm asking for, Rose said, her smile revealing a missing front tooth. Just one day. 20 minutes later, Anthony walked into the boardroom where 5 men and women in expensive suits sat waiting. His assistant gave him a questioning look. He was never late to meetings. Sorry for the delay, Anthony said smoothly, setting down his portfolio. I was handling an unexpected situation that required my personal attention. As he began his presentation, his mind briefly drifted to the lobby, where Rose and her mother, a tired-looking woman in nursing scrubs who had arrived in a panic, were waiting for him to finish. They had exchanged numbers, and Anthony had promised to call later that day to discuss the school event. For now, though, he pushed those thoughts aside. One challenge at a time. He had a company to run, a deal to secure, a future to build, and perhaps, just perhaps, a promise to keep to a little girl with beaded braids and extraordinary courage. The boardroom emptied slowly as executives filed out, each stopping to shake Anthony's hand. Their smiles told him everything he needed to know. The presentation had been a success. Despite his late arrival and the unexpected distraction, he had managed to impress the board members with his vision for Bright Horizons' future. Excellent work, Anthony, said Victor Chen, the head of the board. We'll need to iron out some details, but I think we're all on board with moving forward. Your team should prepare for the next steps. Anthony nodded, relief washing over him. Thank you, Victor. I appreciate the confidence. As the last executive left, Tanya appeared in the doorway. Her expression hesitant. Mr. Reed, the woman and her daughter are still waiting in the small conference room downstairs. Should I tell them you'll be down, or would you like me to reschedule? The meeting had run longer than expected, nearly 2 hours. With a pang of guilt, Anthony realized he had almost forgotten about Rose and her mother. No, don't reschedule. I'll go down now. He gathered his notes. How did the call with Tokyo go? Were we able to push it back? Yes, rescheduled for tomorrow morning at 7. And I cleared your afternoon as requested, though Dr. Franklin from the science division was hoping to get your input on the new prototype. Anthony paused. Tell Dr. Franklin I'll stop by his lab first thing tomorrow. And Tanya, thank you for handling things so smoothly today. She smiled. Of course, Mr. Reed. The small conference room on the ground floor was a stark contrast to the executive boardroom upstairs. While still elegant, it lacked the panoramic views and state-of-the-art technology. Rose sat at the table with a coloring book open before her, tongue caught between her teeth in concentration as she carefully filled in a picture of a rocket ship. Her mother sat beside her, scrolling through her phone with worried eyes. When Anthony entered, both looked up. The mother, dressed in light blue nursing scrubs under a worn jacket, immediately stood. Mr. Reed, I can't apologize enough for my daughter's behavior. Her voice was tired but dignified. I assure you, Rose knows better than to bother strangers at work. We'll be going now, and I promise this won't happen again. Mrs. Anthony began, extending his hand. Ms. Jackson, Diane Jackson. She shook his hand firmly. And we've taken up enough of your time. Actually, Ms. Jackson, I'd like to discuss your daughter's request if you have a few minutes. Surprise flickered across Diane's face. She glanced at Rose, who was watching them with hopeful eyes, then back to Anthony. You can't be serious. Anthony pulled out a chair and sat down. I admit it's an unusual situation, but I'd like to hear more about this father-daughter day. Rose mentioned it's happening tomorrow. Yes, but, Mom, Rose interjected, closing her coloring book. I told Mr. Reed about how Dad won't be home for another 3 months and how you have to work, and about the article in the newspaper. Diane's expression softened with understanding. The Veterans Center fundraiser. She turned to Anthony. Rose was very impressed by that article. She's kept it on our refrigerator for weeks. She sighed. Mr. Reed, while I appreciate you taking the time to speak with us, surely you understand that what Rose is asking is impossible. Anthony leaned forward slightly. I'm not so sure about that. Tell me about this event. Diane seemed taken aback by his interest. It's just a school thing. Activities, lunch, some presentations about what the fathers do for work. It lasts from 9 to 2. She shook her head. But I couldn't possibly ask you to. You're not asking. Rose already did? Anthony smiled at the little girl, who beamed back at him. And I'm considering it. Diane stared at him. Why? It was a fair question. Anthony himself wasn't entirely sure of the answer. He glanced at Rose, who had returned to her coloring but was clearly listening to every word. My own father passed away 3 years ago, he said quietly. He was my hero growing up. Worked 2 jobs to support our family, never missed a single one of my school events, even when I know he was exhausted. He met Diane's eyes. When I saw that article about the Veterans Center, I thought about him, about what he would have wanted me to do with the success I've found. So I donated, and now when your daughter shows up with this request, I can't help thinking this is exactly the kind of thing my dad would have done. A moment of silence stretched between them. Besides, Anthony continued, I cleared my afternoon. I might as well put it to good use. Diane studied him, wariness gradually giving way to cautious hope. You're really willing to do this? To spend a day at an elementary school, pretending to be a father figure to a child you just met? Put that way, it did sound strange. Anthony laughed. When you say it like that, I'm not sure if I should be offended or if you're just being sensible. A small smile tugged at Diane's lips. Sensible is my middle name. It comes with being a single parent while your spouse is deployed. Mom was going to ask Uncle Terry to go with me, Rose piped up, not looking up from her coloring. But he broke his leg last week falling off Mr. Wilson's roof. He was helping our neighbor with repairs, Diane explained. He's my brother, and he's been a great support since my husband deployed. But with his injury... She shrugged helplessly. Anthony nodded, understanding the situation more clearly now. This wasn't just about a little girl wanting a stand-in dad for a day. It was about a family facing one challenge after another, doing their best to keep things normal for a child whose father was serving overseas. I'd like to help, if you'll let me, he said simply. Diane looked at him for a long moment, then pulled out her phone. Let me see your ID, please. Anthony raised an eyebrow but took out his wallet and handed over his driver's license. Diane studied it, then took a photo of it with her phone. Just so we're clear, she said, handing it back. I'm texting this to my brother and my best friend, along with your name and workplace. If anything seems off tomorrow, they'll be calling the police and your company's board of directors. Far from being offended, Anthony felt his respect for her grow. I would expect nothing less. You're a good mother, Ms. Jackson. Call me Diane, she said, softening slightly. And you should know Rose's teacher will need to be informed about this arrangement. Anthony nodded. Of course. Rose had stopped coloring and was watching them, eyes darting between the adults like she was following a tennis match. So, can he come to Father-Daughter Day? She asked her mother, hope trembling in her voice. Diane looked at her daughter, then back at Anthony. I suppose we can give it a try. But Mr. Reed, Anthony, you need to know what you're getting into. This isn't just showing up and sitting in a classroom. There are activities, games. The fathers talk about their jobs. I think I can manage that, Anthony said with a small smile. I do give presentations for a living. It's not the same as presenting to a room full of third graders, Diane warned, but her tone had lightened. You're right about that. Third graders are probably tougher critics. That earned him a genuine laugh from Diane and a giggle from Rose. Can I see where you work? Rose asked suddenly. Since you're going to pretend to be my dad tomorrow, you should know that my real dad always shows me new places we visit. Anthony hesitated, glancing at Diane, who gave a small nod. I suppose a quick tour wouldn't hurt, he said. But just of the public areas. Rose jumped up, nearly knocking over her chair in excitement. Can I see where you have meetings? And where you make all the cool technology stuff? As they left the conference room, Tanya appeared, looking surprised to see Anthony with the visitors. Mr. Reed, I wasn't expecting you to. Tanya, this is Rose and her mother, Diane. I'm giving them a brief tour of the facility. Could you let security know they're with me? If Tanya was confused, she hid it well. Of course, sir. As they walked through the building, Rose peppered Anthony with questions about everything they saw. How many people worked there? What did all the machines do? Was that real glass in the big windows or just plastic? By the time they reached the main lobby again, 40 minutes later, Anthony found himself both exhausted and oddly energized by her curiosity. Thank you for the tour, Diane said as they prepared to leave. And for, well, everything. The school is on Maple Avenue, Rose told Anthony seriously. Do you know how to get there? I'm sure I can find it, he assured her. What time should I arrive? 8:45, Rose and Diane said in unison. Anthony nodded. Then I'll see you both at 8:45 tomorrow morning. As they walked away, Rose turning to wave one more time before they passed through the revolving doors. Anthony stood in the lobby of the building that represented everything he'd worked for. Yet somehow in that moment his mind was entirely focused on what tomorrow might bring. A day of pretending to be someone he wasn't. A father. Back in his office, he called his assistant. Tanya, I need you to research something for me. Yes, Mr. Reed. What do third graders like these days, and what exactly happens at a Father-Daughter Day? Anthony pulled up to the modest two-story apartment building at exactly 7:30 that evening. The brick structure was well-maintained but clearly aging, with window air conditioning units dotting its facade like metal growths. He double-checked the address Diane had texted him, then grabbed the paper bag from his passenger seat. He hadn't planned on visiting their home before tomorrow's event. But after spending the afternoon researching Father-Daughter Days, thanks to Tanya's surprisingly detailed report, and making several calls to reschedule his meetings, he'd realized there was more preparation needed than he'd initially thought. The buzzer for apartment 3B rang hollowly, and moments later Diane's voice crackled through the speaker. Hello? It's Anthony Reed. A pause. Come on up. The stairwell was clean but worn, the blue carpet threadbare in places from years of footsteps. Anthony found himself noticing details he might have overlooked before. The carefully mended wall where someone had patched a hole, the fresh paint on the railings, the small potted plant someone had placed in the window at the landing, small touches of care in a building that had seen better days. Diane opened the door before he could knock, surprise evident on her face despite having just buzzed him in. She had changed out of her scrubs into jeans and a faded university sweatshirt, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. I didn't expect to see you until tomorrow, she said, stepping aside to let him in. I realized there were some things we should probably discuss before then. Anthony held up the paper bag. I also brought dinner. I hope you like Thai food. Diane's eyebrows rose, but a small smile played at her lips. Food is always welcome. Come in. The apartment was small but immaculately kept. Family photos lined the walls, many featuring a man in military uniform alongside Diane and Rose. The furniture was modest and slightly mismatched, but comfortable looking, with colorful throws and pillows adding warmth to the space. A bookshelf overflowed with children's books, medical textbooks, and paperback novels. Rose, Diane called. We have a visitor. Rose appeared from a hallway, dressed in pajamas covered with cartoon astronauts. Her hair was free of the beads now, forming a soft cloud around her face. When she saw Anthony, her eyes widened. Mr. Reed, you're here. She looked at her mother. Is he still going to take me tomorrow? Yes, Diane assured her. Mr. Reed just came to talk about some details for tomorrow. And I brought dinner, Anthony added, holding up the bag. Rose bounced on her toes. Did you bring spring rolls? Dad always gets spring rolls. Anthony felt a moment of panic. He hadn't thought to order spring rolls, but then Rose giggled. I'm just teasing. Dad actually likes the dumplings better. Diane shook her head, a mixture of amusement and apology in her eyes. Let me get some plates. Rose, please clear your homework from the table. As they settled around the small dining table, Anthony felt strangely nervous. He had dined with business partners worth billions, negotiated deals that changed industries, yet somehow sitting down to dinner with this nurse and her daughter made him feel out of his element. So, Diane said as she served the food, what details did you want to discuss? Anthony pulled a small notebook from his jacket pocket. I did some research on father-daughter days, and I realized there are things I should know about Rose and your family to make tomorrow go smoothly. Rose leaned forward, suddenly serious. Like what my dad would know about me. Exactly. Diane watched him with a new look in her eyes, something like respect. That's thoughtful of you. It's practical, Anthony replied. If I'm going to do this, I should do it right. Over pad thai and green curry, Anthony learned about Rose's life. Her favorite subject was science, but she struggled with spelling. She had a collection of rocks she'd gathered from various family trips. Her father, Staff Sergeant David Jackson, had been deployed 3 times since Rose was born, and this current deployment was his longest yet. He's been gone for 7 months already, Rose said, pushing a piece of chicken around her plate. But he sends me videos every week, and sometimes we get to video chat. Rose has a special book where she writes down everything important that happens, so she can tell her dad all about it when he gets back, Diane explained. That's a great idea, Anthony said. Will tomorrow go in the book? Rose nodded solemnly. I'm going to tell Dad all about you helping me. He'll think it's super cool that I met a real CEO. As the meal progressed, Anthony scribbled notes. Rose's favorite color, purple. Her best friend's name, Zoe. Her dad's nickname for her, Rosebud. The fact that she was allergic to strawberries but loved all other berries. The name of her teacher, Mrs. Thompson. The title of the book her class was reading, Charlotte's Web. Is there anything specific I should know about the other kids or parents? Anthony asked as he helped clear the dishes. Diane hesitated. Some of the fathers can be competitive, especially Mr. Crawford, Rose added. He always tries to win all the games, even when it's just for fun. And I should warn you, Diane said, lowering her voice slightly. Some people might stare. Our neighborhood isn't very diverse, and the school even less so. Anthony nodded, understanding her meaning. I'm used to that. After dinner, Rose insisted on showing Anthony her room. It was small but cheerful, with bookshelves stuffed with well-loved books and a desk covered in science projects. A bulletin board on one wall was filled with photos, drawings, and what looked like letters. That's my dad wall, Rose explained. I put up all the pictures and letters from Dad so I can see him every day. Anthony studied the photos. David Jackson had a kind face and the same serious eyes as his daughter. In most pictures, he was either in uniform or playing with Rose, building sandcastles, riding bikes, reading books together. He looks like a great dad, Anthony said quietly. The best, Rose agreed. But he says being a good dad isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up. From the doorway, Diane watched them with an unreadable expression. Rose, it's getting late. Time to brush your teeth. After Rose had said her goodnights and disappeared into the bathroom, Diane walked Anthony to the door. Thank you for dinner, she said, and for coming by tonight. Most people wouldn't have thought to prepare like this. Anthony shrugged. I prepare for all my important meetings. Diane smiled at that. One more thing you should know. Rose's father always gives her a high five when he drops her off at school. It's their special goodbye. Anthony nodded, adding it to his mental list. Noted. And Anthony? Diane's voice grew serious. I know this is just one day for you, but for Rose, it means the world. So thank you. The weight of that responsibility settled on Anthony's shoulders. I'll do my best not to let her down. Back in his car, Anthony reviewed his notes one more time. Then he pulled out his phone and pulled up a video on how to properly tie a child's hair with beads. After watching it twice, he sighed and put the phone away. Some things would just have to be improvised. The following morning dawned bright and clear. Anthony woke before his alarm, a strange mixture of nervousness and excitement in his stomach. He dressed carefully in what Tanya had assured him was dad casual, nice jeans, a button-down shirt, and a navy blazer. Professional enough to talk about his job, but relaxed enough for school games. He arrived at Rose's apartment building at 8:15, carrying a small paper bag. Diane answered the door looking harried, her nurse's scrubs already on. Thank goodness you're here, she said, ushering him in. Rose is still getting ready and I need to leave for my shift in 10 minutes. The apartment was a flurry of activity. Books were being stuffed into backpacks, lunch was being packed, and Rose's voice called from the bathroom, Mom! I can't get my hair right. Diane looked at Anthony apologetically. Would you mind? Before he could answer, Rose appeared in the hallway holding a hairbrush and a bag of colorful beads. She wore a purple dress with a white cardigan, and her hair was partially braided, the rest still frizzy around her shoulders. Mr. Reed, you're early. Then she noticed the small bag in his hand. What's that? Anthony held it out to her. Just a little something for today. Inside was a small purple pin in the shape of a star. I thought you might want to wear it, Anthony explained. For good luck, Rose's face lit up. It matches my dress. Mom, look. As Diane helped Rose pin it to her cardigan, Anthony found himself smiling. Then Rose held out the hairbrush to him expectantly. Can you help with my braids? Mom has to leave soon. Anthony felt a moment of panic. He had watched the video, but he hadn't actually practiced. It's okay if you can't, Rose said quickly. Dad's not very good at it either. Mom usually does it. I can try, Anthony said, taking the brush, but no promises about the results. 10 minutes later, after much laughter and several failed attempts, Rose's hair was in two somewhat uneven braids with beads that didn't quite match. But she beamed at her reflection in the mirror as if it were a masterpiece. Perfect, she declared. Now we're ready for Father-Daughter Day. As they walked out to Anthony's car, Rose slipped her small hand into his without hesitation. The simple gesture caught him off guard, a lump forming unexpectedly in his throat. For today at least, he wasn't just Anthony Reed, CEO. He was Rose's stand-in dad. And somehow that felt like the most important job he'd ever taken on. Pinewood Elementary School buzzed with activity as fathers and daughters filed through the main entrance. Anthony parked his sleek black car among minivans and SUVs, feeling oddly out of place. He checked his watch. 8:40 right on schedule. Are you nervous? Rose asked from the back seat, where she sat securely buckled in the booster seat Diane had insisted they install the night before. Anthony glanced in the rearview mirror, catching Rose's watchful eyes. A little, he admitted. Are you? She nodded, fiddling with the star pin on her cardigan. What if someone asked questions about you? About us? It was a good point, one they should have discussed earlier. Anthony turned in his seat to face her. What do you think we should tell them? Rose considered this seriously. We could say you are my uncle, or my mom's friend. Or, Anthony suggested gently, we could tell the truth, that your dad is serving our country overseas and I'm helping out for the day. Rose's eyes widened. But then everyone will know my real dad couldn't come. They probably already know he's deployed, right? When Rose nodded, Anthony continued. Then there's nothing to be embarrassed about. Your dad is doing something important and brave. And you were brave too, finding someone to stand in for him today. Rose thought about this, then slowly nodded. Okay, but can we practice our high five before we go in? Dad and I have a special one. 5 minutes later, after several attempts at a complicated sequence of slaps, finger snaps, and fist bumps that left Anthony laughing at his own clumsiness, they walked toward the school entrance. Rose held his hand tightly, her earlier confidence wavering as they approached the crowd. A woman with a clipboard and a bright yellow volunteer badge stood at the door. "Good morning. Names, please?" "Rose Jackson," Rose said, her voice small. "And this is Mr. Reed. I'm filling in for her father today," Anthony finished smoothly. "Staff Sergeant David Jackson is currently deployed overseas." The woman's expression softened. "Of course. Thank you for your service, Mr. Reed." Anthony started to correct her, to explain he wasn't military himself, but Rose tugged at his hand. "Can we find my classroom now?" They navigated the colorful hallways, passing bulletin boards filled with student artwork and posters about the solar system. Children and adults moved in clusters, the air filled with excited chatter. Rose led the way confidently until they reached a door decorated with paper flowers, each bearing a student's name. "This is it," she whispered, suddenly hesitant. Inside, the classroom was already half full. Girls in dresses and neat outfits sat at desks beside men in various states of business casual, some clearly having come straight from work, others dressed down for the occasion. Mrs. Thompson, a slender woman with kind eyes behind stylish glasses, greeted them at the door. "Rose, I'm so glad you could make it." Her eyes moved to Anthony with a hint of question. "Mrs. Thompson, this is Mr. Reed," Rose explained. "He's helping me today because my dad is still deployed." Understanding dawned in the teacher's eyes. "How wonderful of you to step in, Mr. Reed. We're so happy to have you both." As they found Rose's desk, Anthony noticed the subtle looks from other parents and children, some curious, some friendly, a few openly surprised. One man in particular, tall with carefully styled hair and an expensive watch, seemed to be studying them with particular interest. "That's Mr. Crawford," Rose whispered. "Zoe's dad. Remember I told you about him?" Before Anthony could respond, a small girl with braided hair bounced up to their desk. "Rose, you came!" She looked up at Anthony with frank curiosity. "Are you Rose's dad?" "This is my friend Zoe," Rose said quickly. "And no, he's not my dad. He's Mr. Reed. He's helping me today because my dad is still away." Zoe nodded as if this made perfect sense. "Cool. My dad says your dad is a hero." "He is," Rose agreed proudly. The tall man, Mr. Crawford, appeared behind his daughter. "Zoe, don't bother people." He extended his hand to Anthony. "Tom Crawford. I don't think we've met before." "Anthony Reed, I'm a friend of the family." Tom's eyebrows rose. "Reed? Not Anthony Reed of Bright Horizon Technologies?" Anthony nodded, surprised to be recognized. "I thought you looked familiar. I read about your renewable energy initiative in Business Weekly." Tom lowered his voice. "I'm in finance myself. Crawford Investments." Before the conversation could continue, Mrs. Thompson called the class to attention. "Welcome, everyone, to our annual Father-Daughter Day. We have a wonderful schedule planned, starting with our What My Father Does presentations. Girls will introduce their fathers, who will then give a short talk about their jobs." Rose looked up at Anthony with sudden panic in her eyes. "I didn't know we had to do a presentation." "It's okay," he whispered back. "Just introduce me, and I can talk about my job. No problem." But as they watched the first few presentations, Mr. Crawford discussing investment banking, a doctor explaining how he helps sick children, a firefighter showing pictures of his truck, Anthony realized this wasn't going to be as simple as he'd thought. These men weren't just describing their jobs. They were connecting their work to things the children could understand, making their careers sound exciting and meaningful. When Rose's turn came, she walked nervously to the front of the room. "This is Mr. Reed. He's not my real dad. My dad is Staff Sergeant David Jackson, and he's serving overseas right now. But Mr. Reed is helping me today, and he's a CEO." There was a moment of awkward silence before Anthony joined her at the front. He'd given hundreds of presentations, but standing before 23rd graders and their fathers suddenly felt more intimidating than any boardroom. "Good morning," he began. "As Rose said, I'm Anthony Reed. I run a company called Bright Horizon Technologies. Does anyone know what technology means?" Several hands shot up, including Zoe's. "It's like phones and computers and stuff." "That's right," Anthony nodded. "My company makes special technology that helps create clean energy. Does anyone know what energy is?" The discussion flowed more naturally than he'd expected. The children asked surprisingly insightful questions. Why did the world need clean energy? How did solar panels work? Did he invent the technology himself? One by one, he answered them, simplifying complex concepts without talking down to the kids. The most important part of my job, he concluded, is thinking about the future. Your future. The technology we create today will help make a better world for you tomorrow. As they returned to their seats, Rose whispered, "That was awesome. You made your job sound so cool." "It is cool," Anthony replied with a smile, "but probably not as cool as your dad's job." After the presentations came a science activity, building small solar-powered cars using kits provided by the school. Anthony found himself enjoying the challenge of working with Rose to assemble the tiny vehicle, helping her connect wires and attach wheels without simply taking over the project. "My dad and I build stuff together when he's home," Rose explained as she carefully attached a miniature solar panel. "He says it's important to know how things work." "Your dad sounds very smart," Anthony said, holding a piece steady while Rose applied glue. "He is, but not about everything. He's really bad at math," she giggled. "Mom has to help him with the bills when he's home." These little glimpses into their family life fascinated Anthony. The Jacksons' challenges were so different from his own, yet in many ways more relatable than the rarefied problems of his usual social circle. When the time came to test their cars in the hallway, Rose's and Anthony's creation wasn't the fastest, but it moved steadily along the floor, powered entirely by the ceiling lights above. "We did it," Rose cheered, giving Anthony a high five, the complicated one they'd practiced, which he somehow executed perfectly this time. Lunch brought another challenge, the father-daughter relay races on the playground. Anthony hadn't run in anything other than a treadmill in years, but he found himself lining up beside other fathers, some in dress shoes like him, others who had come prepared in sneakers. "The key to winning," Mr. Crawford advised loudly, stretching his hamstrings, "is to go all out from the start. Don't pace yourself." Anthony caught Rose's eye and winked. When the whistle blew, he set off at a steady pace, neither sprinting nor lagging. Rose waited at the halfway point, jumping with excitement. They had practiced their handoff earlier, and it went smoothly, Rose taking the baton and dashing toward the finish line with surprising speed. They didn't win. That honor went to a gym teacher and his athletic daughter, but they finished solidly in the middle of the pack, both breathing hard and laughing. That was fun. Rose panted, hands on her knees. "Did you see how fast I ran at the end?" "You were amazing," Anthony agreed, genuinely impressed. "You almost caught up to the leaders." As they headed back inside for the final activities of the day, Anthony realized something surprising. He was having fun. Real fun. Not the polite enjoyment he feigned at corporate events. There was something refreshing about spending time with children, who said exactly what they thought and found joy in the simplest things. For the art project that followed lunch, each pair created a collage representing their relationship. Anthony watched as Rose carefully cut out pictures from magazines. A rocket ship, a star, a microscope, and finally a tall office building. "That's your company," she explained, gluing it to their poster. "And these are the things I like, space and science. And this," she placed a picture of a family at a picnic near the center, "is because today felt like a real family day." Anthony felt something catch in his throat as he helped her add the final touches to their collage. On the construction paper border, Rose carefully wrote, "Rose and Mr. Reed's special day." When Mrs. Thompson called time, Rose held up their creation proudly. "It's not the fanciest," she admitted, "but I think it shows us." Looking at their simple collage amid the others, some elaborately decorated with glitter and ribbon, Anthony nodded. "I think it's perfect." The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the school parking lot as Anthony and Rose walked toward his car. Father-Daughter Day had ended with a special assembly, where each class had performed a song, followed by cookies and punch in the cafeteria. Rose clutched their collage in her hand and Anthony's hand in the other, her earlier shyness completely gone. "Did you have fun?" she asked, looking up at him with those serious eyes that now seemed so familiar. "I did," Anthony answered truthfully. "Much more than I expected." "Me too." Rose swung their joined hands. "Everyone thought you were so cool, especially after you fixed the projector when it broke during the assembly." Anthony laughed. "That was nothing, just a loose cable. But nobody else knew how to fix it," Rose pointed out. "Even Mr. Crawford tried and couldn't do it." The memory of Tom Crawford's frustrated attempts to repair the projection system, followed by Anthony's simple solution, brought a small smile to his face. There had been a subtle shift after that moment, the other fathers treating him less like an outsider and more like one of them. As they reached the car, Anthony's phone buzzed. It was Tanya, his assistant, who had been sending him discreet updates throughout the day. "Everything okay?" Rose asked, noticing his frown as he read the message. "Just work," he said, putting the phone away. The Tokyo investors were requesting an urgent video call, despite the time difference. It could wait. Once Rose was buckled into her booster seat, Anthony started the car but didn't pull out right away. "Your mom won't be home for a few more hours. Are you hungry? We could get an early dinner." Rose's face lit up.
Can we go to Moonlight Diner?
"It's my dad's favorite place. He always takes me there for special days." 20 minutes later, they were settled in a booth at Moonlight Diner, a retro-style restaurant with checkerboard floors and red vinyl seats. Rose knew exactly what she wanted without looking at the menu: chocolate chip pancakes and a strawberry milkshake. She stopped suddenly. "Oh wait, no strawberry. I'm allergic. Vanilla, please." The waitress, an older woman with kind eyes and a name tag that read Flo, smiled at Rose. "I remember you, honey. You always come in with your dad when he's home. How's he doing?" "He's still overseas," Rose explained. "This is Mr. Reed. He took me to Father-Daughter Day at school." Flo's eyes widened slightly as she took in Anthony in his expensive clothes, so clearly out of place in the humble diner. But her smile never faltered. "Well, that was mighty nice of him. The pancakes and vanilla shake for the young lady. And for you, sir." "I'll have the same," Anthony decided, folding the menu. "When in Rome, right?" As they waited for their food, Rose told him more about her father, how he could do 100 push-ups without stopping, how he knew the name of every star in the sky, how he sang silly songs while they washed dishes together. "Do you have kids, Mr. Reed?" she asked suddenly. Anthony shook his head. "No, I don't. Why not?" "You'd be a good dad." The question caught him off guard. I guess I've always been busy with work. Building my company took a lot of time." Rose considered this, her head tilted thoughtfully. "My dad says nothing is more important than family, not even his job protecting our country." "Your dad sounds like a wise man," Anthony said softly. Their food arrived: golden pancakes stacked high and topped with melting butter, milkshakes in tall glasses with whipped cream. Rose dug in with enthusiasm, and Anthony found himself enjoying the simple meal more than any fancy restaurant dinner in recent memory. "Look," Rose whispered suddenly, pointing to the window. Outside, snow had begun to fall, the first of the season. Fat, fluffy flakes drifted down, already beginning to stick to the sidewalk. "It's beautiful," Anthony agreed. Rose's eyes sparkled. "Can we go to the park across the street after we eat? Just for a little while? Dad and I always play in the first snow." Anthony glanced at his watch. They still had time before Diane would be home. "Sure, why not?" The park was small but well kept, with swings, a slide, and an open grassy area now being covered with a thin blanket of white. Rose ran ahead, her purple dress bright against the snow, arms outstretched to catch falling flakes on her sleeves. "It's magical," she called back to him. "Come on." Anthony followed more slowly, mindful of his dress shoes and the light dusting of snow. He hadn't played in snow since, college maybe? But Rose's joy was infectious, and soon he found himself helping her gather snow to build a tiny snowman. No bigger than a football, but complete with pebble eyes and twig arms. "We should take a picture for your dad," Anthony suggested, "to put in your special book." Rose's face lit up. "Yes, can we take one together with the snowman?" Anthony set up his phone camera with the timer, and they knelt beside their creation. Just as the flash went off, Rose threw a handful of snow in the air, creating a shower of white around them. The resulting photo caught them both laughing, snowflakes in their hair, the tiny snowman proudly displayed between them. As the afternoon wound down and the snow began to fall more heavily, they finally headed to Rose's apartment. The day had taken on a dreamlike quality for Anthony, so far removed from his normal routine, yet somehow more real than the meetings and spreadsheets that usually filled his hours. Diane was already home when they arrived, looking tired but smiling as she opened the door. "There you are. I was just about to text you. How was the day?" Rose burst into an excited recounting of everything that had happened: the presentations, the relay race, the collage, the diner, the snow. She produced their artwork, holding it up proudly for her mother to see. It sounds like you had quite an adventure, Diane said, helping Rose out of her snow-dampened cardigan. Why don't you go change into something dry? Then you can tell me more. When Rose had disappeared down the hallway, Diane turned to Anthony. Thank you, I mean it. This meant the world to her. It was my pleasure, Anthony replied, surprised to realize how sincerely he meant it. She's an amazing kid. She is, Diane agreed softly. Her father will be so grateful too. I sent him some pictures I got from the school's photographer. He's going to try to call later tonight for a video chat. Anthony nodded, suddenly aware that his role was coming to an end. The day was over. He had been Rose's stand-in father, but now it was time to step back. I should get going, he said. Let you two have your evening. Of course, Diane walked him to the door. I'm sure you have a lot of work to catch up on. He did. Dozens of emails, the call with Tokyo, preparations for tomorrow's meetings. Yet somehow none of it seemed as pressing as it had just yesterday. Mr. Reed, Rose called, running back into the living room in dry clothes. Are you leaving? Anthony knelt down to her level. Yes, I am. I have to get back to work. But I had a wonderful day with you, Rose. Without warning, she threw her arms around his neck in a tight hug. Thank you for being my pretend dad today, she whispered. Anthony felt his throat tighten as he carefully returned the hug. Thank you for asking me, he replied. 3 months later, on a crisp winter morning, Anthony sat in his office reviewing quarterly reports when his phone buzzed with a text from Diane. It contained only a photo, Rose in the arms of a man in military uniform, both beaming at the camera. The caption read, "Thought you'd want to know David is home safe. Rose told him all about your adventure. He says thank you." Anthony smiled at the image, then turned to look at the framed photo on his desk that hadn't been there before. Rose and himself in the snow, laughing as they knelt beside a tiny snowman. Next to it sat a purple star pin, which Rose had insisted he keep to remember our special day. The intercom buzzed, interrupting his thoughts. Mr. Reed, the students from Pinewood Elementary are here for the technology workshop. Send them in, Anthony replied, standing to greet his visitors. The door opened, and 20 excited third graders filed into the conference room. Wide-eyed at the displays of solar panels and miniature wind turbines set up around the space. At the front of the group stood Rose, proudly wearing a junior tour guide badge he had made specially for her. Welcome to Bright Horizon Technologies, Anthony announced to the class. My name is Mr. Reed, and I'm going to show you how we're building technology to make your future brighter. As he began the presentation, his eyes met Rose's and she gave him their now practiced high-five sequence. What had begun as pretending to be a father for just one day had grown into something neither of them had expected, a genuine connection that had changed them both. The mentorship program Anthony had established at Pinewood Elementary was just the beginning. He had also started a scholarship fund for children of deployed military personnel and implemented family-friendly policies at his own company. As for Rose, she had appointed herself his official kid consultant for new educational programs, solemnly informing him which ideas would actually appeal to children and which would be totally boring. Sometimes the most unexpected requests lead to the most meaningful changes. A little girl had asked a busy CEO to pretend, just for a day, to be something he wasn't. Instead, she had helped him discover a part of himself that had been there all along, just waiting for the right person to bring it to life.